Imagine losing the one friend who's been by my side through every tear, every lonely night for 15 years. My best friend, my dog. This is my heartbreaking true story, straight from my own experience, about the morning I had to say goodbye to my loyal companion after a lifetime of shared memories. From my teenage struggles to battling depression, this dog was my rock, my comfort in the darkest times. But when his health began to fade, I faced a tough decision. What made our bond so special, and how did I find the strength to let go? Let's dive in. That morning felt like the world had stopped spinning. I woke up to the soft light of dawn creeping through my bedroom window, but there was no familiar nudge from my dog, Max, to greet me. For 15 years, he'd been the first thing I saw every day. His big, soulful brown eyes staring up at me, tail wagging like a metronome, ready to start our day together. But that morning, he was still, curled up in his bed in the corner of the room, his breathing shallow and slow. I knew it was time, but knowing didn't make it any easier. I sat beside him, running my fingers through his graying fur, whispering his name over and over as if saying it enough might keep him with me just a little longer. Max wasn't just a pet. He was my best friend, my confidant, the one constant in a life that had thrown me more curveballs than I could count. I got him when I was just 14, a scrawny kid who didn't fit in anywhere. My parents had brought him home one rainy afternoon, a scrappy little pup with floppy ears and a bark bigger than his body. From that day, we were inseparable. He'd sleep at the foot of my bed, follow me on every adventure, and sit with me on the porch when I needed to escape the chaos of the world. When I cried, he'd rest his head on my lap, like he understood every word I couldn't say. And now, here I was, facing the hardest goodbye I'd ever known. I'd spent the night before holding him, knowing the vet appointment was coming. I didn't sleep. How could I? Every wheeze, every faint wag of his tail felt like a countdown. I told him everything I'd never said out loud, how he'd saved me more times than I could count, how he'd made the unbearable bearable, how he'd taught me what love really meant. When the time came, I carried him to the car, his body so light now, and drove to the vet with tears blurring my vision. The room was quiet, too quiet. As the vet gave him the injection, I held his paw, whispering, "You're the best boy, Max," until his eyes closed for the last time. That goodbye broke me, but it was the least I could do for the friend who'd given me everything. Looking back, those 15 years with Max feel like a lifetime of lessons, wrapped in unconditional love. It all started that rainy afternoon when I was 14, a kid who felt like the world was too big, too heavy. I was the quiet one at school, always on the outside looking in, struggling with bullies and a home life that wasn't always steady. My parents thought a dog might help, and they were right. Max became my anchor. I still remember the first night he curled up beside me, his tiny body warm against mine, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. That was the beginning of our journey, one that would carry me through some of the hardest chapters of my life. As I grew up, Max grew with me. He was there when I flunked my first math test, his head on my knee as I cried over the big red F. He was there for my first heartbreak at 16, sitting with me on the porch as I tried to make sense of a world that felt so cruel. When I moved out at 19, scared and broke, Max was my co-pilot in that beat-up car, his tail thumping against the seat like he knew we'd be okay. Through every late-night study session, every job rejection, every moment I doubted myself, Max was there, his steady presence reminding me I wasn't facing it all alone. He'd greet me at the door after a long day, his bark echoing through the house, and suddenly, everything felt lighter. But it wasn't just the tough times. Max was part of the good ones, too. We'd go on long walks through the woods, just the two of us, chasing squirrels and splashing through creeks. I'd throw his favorite tennis ball until my arm gave out, his joyful leaps making me laugh harder than I thought I could. He was there for my first real job, my first apartment, my first taste of what it felt like to have my life together. Max wasn't just a dog. He was my partner in every sense of the word, a witness to my growth from a lost teenager to someone who finally found their footing. Those 15 years weren't always easy, but they were ours, filled with a kind of love I didn't know was possible until he came into my life. And as I sat there that final morning, holding him as he slipped away, I couldn't help but think of every moment we'd shared, every step we'd taken together. Max wasn't just a companion. He was my lifeline, my safe harbor in a world that often felt like it was trying to swallow me whole. Those 15 years we shared weren't just a timeline of memories. They were a testament to how much one dog could mean to a person, how deeply he could change a life. When I think about the darkest moments I faced, Max was always there, like a quiet guardian who knew exactly what I needed, even when I didn't. During my teenage years, when I battled depression so heavy I could barely get out of bed, Max would nudge my hand with his wet nose, his big eyes looking up at me as if to say, "I'm here, we'll get through this." He'd lay beside me for hours, his steady breathing a reminder that I wasn't alone, even when I felt like the world had turned its back on me. He had this way of knowing when I was hurting, like he could feel it in his bones. I remember nights when I'd come home after a rough day, maybe a fight with a friend, or a boss who tore me down, and I'd sit on the floor, head in my hands, trying to hold it together. Max would quietly pad over, his nails clicking on the hardwood, and he'd rest his head on my lap, his warmth seeping into me like a hug I didn't know I needed. He never asked for anything, never judged, just sat there with me until the storm in my head passed. That kind of loyalty, that kind of love, it's hard to put into words, but it's what kept me going when I didn't think I could. Max also brought joy in ways I never expected. He had this goofy side, chasing his tail in circles until he'd flop over, dizzy, or barking at his own reflection in the mirror like it was an intruder. He'd steal socks from the laundry basket and parade around the house, tail wagging, like he'd won a prize. Those little moments of silliness were like sunlight breaking through the clouds, reminding me to laugh, to find happiness in the small things. He taught me to slow down, to appreciate the quiet mornings when we'd sit on the porch together, watching the world wake up. Max wasn't just a dog, he was my therapist, my cheerleader, my best friend rolled into one. He showed me what it meant to love without conditions, to be there no matter what. And as I held him that final morning, I realized he'd given me more than I could ever give back. But time has a way of creeping up, even on the ones we love most, and Max wasn't immune to it. About a year ago, I started noticing the changes, small at first, easy to brush off as just him getting older. He'd always been a bundle of energy, bounding after squirrels in the backyard or racing to the door when I got home. But those bursts of joy started to fade. His once sprightly steps turned into a slow shuffle, his joints creaking as he struggled to climb onto the couch. I'd catch him staring off into space, his eyes cloudy, like he was lost in a world I couldn't reach. It broke my heart to see him like that. The dog who'd once been my unstoppable partner, now moving through life with a heaviness I couldn't lift. Then came the harder signs. Max stopped eating his favorite treats, those little bacon strips he used to go wild for. He'd sniff them, maybe give a half-hearted lick, then turn away, his tail barely twitching. He started sleeping more, curled up in his bed for hours, and when he did get up, he'd stumble, his legs wobbling beneath him. I took him to the vet, hoping for a quick fix, but the news wasn't good. His kidneys were failing, they said, and at 15 years old, there wasn't much they could do. They gave me options, medications, special diets, but I could see in Max's eyes that he was tired, so tired. He wasn't the same dog who'd chased his tail in circles or barked at his reflection. He was fading, and I knew I couldn't let him suffer just to keep him with me a little longer. The decision weighed on me like a stone. Every night I'd sit with him, stroking his fur, trying to memorize the feel of him under my hands. I'd talk to him, telling him about our adventures, hoping he could still hear me, still feel the love I had for him. But I could tell he was ready to go, even if I wasn't ready to let him. The vet had warned me that waiting too long would only mean more pain for him, and I couldn't bear that. Not for Max, who'd spent his life easing my pain. So I made the call, scheduling the appointment for that quiet morning, knowing it would be the last time I'd see those soulful brown eyes. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the kindest. A final act of love for the dog who'd given me everything. The days after Max's passing felt like walking through a fog. Everything was gray, heavy, and quiet in a way that hurt. I'd wake up each morning, instinctively looking for him at the foot of my bed, waiting for the sound of his tail thumping against the floor. But there was nothing. The silence was deafening. His bed still sat in the corner of my room, a little worn blanket folded inside, and I couldn't bring myself to move it. I'd walk past it and feel my chest tighten, the grief hitting me in waves I couldn't control. I'd see his favorite tennis ball on the shelf, or hear a dog bark down the street, and it would all come rushing back, the memory of his goofy grin, the way he'd nudge my hand when I was sad, the life we'd built together. Losing Max wasn't just losing a pet. It was losing a piece of myself, a piece I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. But even in the midst of that pain, there was something else growing inside me. Gratitude, deep and unshakable. Max had given me 15 years of pure, unconditional love, the kind that doesn't come around often. He'd been there through my lowest lows, my teenage battles with depression, my first heartbreak, my struggles to find my place in the world. He'd celebrated my wins, too. My first job, my first apartment, all the little victories that felt so big because he was there to share them. Every memory I have of him is a reminder of how lucky I was to have him in my life. I'm grateful for the way he taught me to love, to be patient, to find joy in the smallest things, like a sunny afternoon walk or a quiet moment on the porch. I have to believe, that Max felt that love too. I hope he knew how much he meant to me, how every belly rub, every treat, every good boy I whispered was my way of saying thank you. I hope his life was as happy as he made mine, that he felt safe and loved every single day. As I sit here now, thinking about him, I know the pain of losing him will never fully go away. But I also know that the love we shared, the bond we built over 15 years, will always be a part of me. Max may be gone, but he left me with a gift I'll carry forever. A heart a little bigger, a little braver because of him. That's my story with Max, a 15-year journey of love, loss, and lessons I'll never forget. Losing him left a hole in my heart, but I'm so grateful for every moment we shared, every wag of his tail that made my world brighter. I hope Max knew how much I loved him, just as he loved me. What about you? Have you ever had a pet who changed your life like Max did mine? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. If this touched you, hit that like button and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. See you next time.